Let me begin by asking you a bit of a facetious question. I'm wondering how many of you in the course of your life may have had some kind of relationship, good or bad, with a family member, maybe a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, anybody. Or maybe, is there anybody in the course of your life who you've had a work relationship with, a colleague, a boss, an employee, a cube mate, somebody that you carpool with? Or have you had a kind of relationship like I sometimes have when I frequent places? I'm a bit of a creature of habit. So when I go to the bank, sometimes I have the same people who wait on me or help me with my exchange. I don't know their name, but it feels like when I see them in other places around the community, it's like I have a relationship with them. How many of you maybe even made a relationship with somebody today coming to this particular event? It's very true that relationships are everywhere, and they come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Some are close, some are near, some are, there's power differences in some are equal, but many times those relationships go awry. And what I'm hoping to do in my time is share with you maybe 4 or 5 ideas that would help you better navigate those relationships when we get stuck. And I like to think of relationships like a living system. Now, I have to say, my wife and I have 2 kids. We have a 17-year-old daughter and we have an 11-year-old son. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, my son and I did what we like to do on Saturdays. We go to this particular warehouse store. You know, you've probably been to these places, the kind where you buy a membership, you show your card when you go in, you get a cart the size of Texas, you go in and buy a year's supply of toilet paper, and you save yourself $6 in the process. We like to go on sample day too because you can get some extra food on the way out. And as we were leaving this particular day, he's 5 or 6 years old and he's pretty smart. He knows he's not with his mother. And if you've been to a store like this, at the end they have like food that's not good for you, but it's the kind of food that you could be filled with tryptophan from head to toe, and you're like, I think I could have some of that. And he sees the drink area and he says, Dad, let's get a drink. Because he knows if he's with his mom, she wouldn't go for it. And I'm like, no, we're in a hurry. We need to get going. There's stuff we need to do. And I'm afraid you're going to spill it, quite honestly. And he kept pleading with me. And I started doing the economics of this. I've just saved $6 in a year's supply of toilet paper. I can get $2 worth of drinks. My son will think I'm a hero. Plus, let's face it, if I were there alone, I'd be at the fountain right now getting a soda. So I give in to his ways, and we get our soda. He's singing praise to me. We go out to the car. I load in the van. I put in my year's supply of toilet paper in the back of the van. I put my son in his car seat and I strap him in like he's an Apollo 13 astronaut. I mean, he is in there safe and secure. Hand him his drink, go around to the other side of the car, get in my side of the van, and I put my drink there, and we back out of the parking lot, and we are not 50 feet away from where I pulled out, and can you guess what happened? He spilled the drink. Now you need to know something. This van that we're riding in is probably 10 years old. It's been across the country a couple of times with various moves for graduate school. It is not rapidly diminishing the value of our van. We like it, but its overall value is not receding rapidly because there's soda on it. But something clicked in me, and I turned and I began to berate this little boy for spilling this drink. Now, I also need to tell you, at this stage in my life, I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. I have a PhD in marriage and family therapy. What's worse is I have a license in marriage and family therapy. Even worse than that, I teach marriage and family therapy. And even worse than that, just recently I had given a lecture on emotion regulation. And I would be lying to you. I would not say that I was enjoying the moment, but the truth of the matter is somewhere in a swampy part of my soul, I could feel all the yuck and muck of whatever was going on in my life just sort of drain from that swamp. The trouble was, it was being sprayed onto my sweet little 5-year-old. And it was all this is happening until, and I can still see him sitting in his little car seat, I saw a little tear run down his eye. And in that moment, I thought, Habben, what is wrong with you? I pulled the van over to a remote part of the parking lot, put it in park, because I learned that's an important thing to do. And I turned to him and I said, son, we all spill. we all spill and we all make mistakes. And don't worry about that. That's not a problem. And I am so sorry for the way I just spoke to you. That is not the way we Habbens do things. That is not what we teach you to do. And here's what I just went and did. I just feel so terrible about that. And there's another thing you need to know, that no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter what happens to your mom and your dad, we love you. And I'm sorry, and if you need to be mad at me for a while, that makes some sense. And he waited for just a second, and I can still see him, and he said, Daddy, you and me, we're still friends? Like, yes, we're still friends. Now let's go to the car wash and get this taken care of, and let's not tell your mom. Which usually is code for tell your mom, and of course he did. So there's 4 things that come to mind for me when I think about what makes for meaningful relationships and how we navigate them. And the first thing, just to bear in mind, is that we are in fact relational people. I mean, we're wired to be in relationship. We're born into relationships. We move into relationships. When we move into kindergarten and school, we have relationships, and we just always are in relationships. And to move into a relationship is an exciting thing for somebody to get to know you. The problem with it is it's also very scary. To be in relationship means that somebody else is going to get to know me, but the backside of it is they're going to get to know me. And sometimes the things that they see are not all that attractive. One of the things I see in my office all the time, when couples and families come in, it's usually some version of people are like, I don't like the way you're acting, and so I'm going to do lots of things to make you act differently so that I feel better. And we would get so much further if we could just own for ourselves, this is something I don't like, this is my contribution, you can be different, but it's okay to be different. When I think about what was happening with my son, it wasn't very attractive for me to see myself yelling at him. But when I saw that little tear, it was a moment when I could see myself. Quite honestly, if I were by myself in the car and it spilled the van, I might have all over the place and nobody would have ever known. And I wouldn't have even really thought much about it because there wasn't somebody reflecting back to me what we saw. So relationships are very powerful. Philosophers say, I'm told, that when a fish jumps out of water, it isn't necessarily air that it discovers, it's water. So the exciting thing for us is to be in relationship, but we have to be able to tolerate learning about ourselves when we are in relationship. The second thing is that a living system will always work towards survival. And so if you're going to be a good survival system, you need a couple of things. You need a good warning system, and you need some coping strategies. And I am just absolutely fascinated by what we're learning about our brains. You've seen some of those things today. We have 2 major systems in the way we operate in our brain. We have in the front part of our brain a prefrontal cortex where all of our rational thinking is going on. And on the side, we have this almond-shaped structure called an amygdala. And the amygdala is absolutely fascinating to me. The amygdala is a place that stores memory. And the way it stores memory is it's kind of like it takes a picture of something that happens, particularly if it's been a painful event of some kind, and it's like it files it somewhere and it attaches to it other things like sight and smell and sound and moments. And so when painfully familiar things happen, the amygdala sends out an alarm and says, this hurt before, we're in trouble, let's do something about that. And then we get kind of reactive. It's also very interesting that the amygdala, when it gets excited, will bypass there's circuitry that will bypass your prefrontal cortex. It's like you literally cannot think. This is helpful to us, by the way. If you've ever put your hand on a stove you burn your hand and you pull it away quickly, it's your amygdala that's saying, that's not good, get out of there. It's almost like if you've done that moment, you pull it away and then you notice you're thinking about it. If it were left to your prefrontal cortex, even though this is in milliseconds, it's going to have a focus group first about should we take the hand off or not. Okay, so it's good survivability to act quickly. The problem is when it's happening for us emotionally, when our amygdala runs amok, it can be challenging. Glenn Veenstra at Wichita State University has this wonderful image about the way our thinking brain and our emotional brain should work together. He said it's like a horse and a rider. When you can regulate and maintain your reactivity and your emotionality, that's what animates your life. It's when our emotion gets dysregulated and we have trouble managing that upset that we get into trouble. Now, what could have happened in this van that was so upsetting to me that I was charging my son a $50 fine for a $5 crime? Well, I thought about that for a while. Now, one of the things that happened in my own life is I am a horrible klutz. I would be the worst cat burglar ever. Because when I sneak into my own, if I'm working late at night, if I try to sneak into our bedroom, I trip over things, I bang my toe on things, I stub things, I break things. Even when I was my son's age, my grandfather had a little nickname for me. It was very innocent, it was not pejorative, but it was reflective of the fact that I was always falling down and bumping into things. And it dawned on me, I was not yelling at my son, I was yelling at me. The threat that I saw was him looking like me at a time that was threatening to me. Does that make some sense? And so part of our work, it can be our internal work, is when we can recognize what's painfully familiar and own our own stuff in that, we're going to get so much further in our relationships. The third thing that comes to mind for me when I think about living systems is living systems, as they get healthier, tend to get more and more complex. If you think about it, we start like a couple of cells and we evolve into this kind of thing. And so as long as the system's living, it's getting more and more complex. And there's a lot more that we could say about that, but what I want to use in this moment is I like to think about that in terms of how we develop somewhat emotionally and even with our personalities. Oftentimes when people are younger, we tend to think in black and white terms, either or. I'm in or I'm out. I'm good or I'm bad. I'm safe or I'm not. And it's more adult-like and I think more mature when we can get to a place where we can think both and. I'm a pretty good person even when I'm not. The message that I wanted to send my son is the same message that I see clients need all the time. If there was one thing that I wish I could say to people on behalf of their parents for them or people that have been important to them, is to be able to lean into people and basically say, do you know, do you understand there is no place you can go where my love can't find you? That you are precious and that you are important. And here's the thing, I can love you and be mad at you at the same time. Those things are not mutually exclusive. And so when we can live in a both and world with those types of things, it's very powerful. The fourth thing is the power of repair. Now, my sweet son, who's now 11, has these wonderful six-pack abs. I have a one-pack that I've been working on. But I'm told by people who work out that when you work out and you lift weights, one of the things that you do a little bit is you tear a little bit of your muscle. And part of what happens then there is repair that happens. Tear and repair. And that's what actually builds muscle. We ought not to be afraid of making repair with people. I think that the part of me started thinking, okay, he's here to talk about navigating relationships, and he tells you the story about where he's berating his son. That's a great example. But the flip side of that is, I think that when we fail each other, in our darkest moments, when we let people down, that is our greatest opportunity to make stronger relationships. So here's what I have in mind. It's not very profound. It's not very difficult to think of, but it's hard to do. Can we live life in relationship? Can we be mindful of our own contributions to situations and regulate our own emotions? Can we be people that think in both and terms, and can we be people that simply work to repair? When I think about this, even in societal terms, wouldn't it be great in the world that we're living in right now if we could be people who are mindful of the fact that we can just need to be flexible sometimes and less rigid in our ideas? If we could, on occasion, recognize with other people that we're upset with That's my contribution, and it comes from my space. It's my stuff and not yours. That we can recognize that I can love you or be frustrated with you or think completely differently than you and still be in a meaningful relationship with you. And that when I make a mistake with you, I can repair and we can be better. If we can live our lives, our relationships like living systems work, I think we're heading in a great direction. Thank you so much.